Séverine, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's jump straight in. Tell me, who are you? Where are you from and where are you based now?
Hi, Joe. Thank you for having me today. So my name is Séverine. I'm from France, as you can guess from my accent. More precisely, I come from a lovely region called Champagne. And have been in Singapore for 3.5 years. I arrived just before COVID.
Oh, I see. So how did you guys end up in Singapore?
So I have a long journey. I've been following my husband for the past 15 years. It all started when we were both working for first years of working in Paris and London, traveling back and forth every weekend for 4 years, spending all our money in Eurostars. We get fed up of that and we decided to move together to a new city. And my husband had a good opportunity in New York. And I was lucky enough to be transferred by my company at that time. I was not working with a local team, but they allowed me to be transferred. And back then in 2007, remote working was not very well spread, very common. So especially in France.
You kept working. So hang on. So when you were doing the long distance between Paris and London, where were you? Were you in Paris?
I was in Paris. My husband was in London. And when we both transferred to New York, I kept working with a team in Paris. So it was very good from my manager to accept to be transferred over there.
And you said this was in 2011? 2007.
Yeah, so remote working was non-existent in France. In the US a little bit, but so I was very lucky. So I arrived with a job. We both had a job. We had 4 amazing years in New York. And after that, my husband had to go to Paris. And we were not very happy about that because the plan was not to go back home. We wanted already to come to Singapore at that time, but the job opportunity could not be turned down. So we moved back to Paris. I was again lucky to be moved by the same company back in Paris, but the job had changed and the company restructuring. I just quit the company for a smaller company and different sector. And even though we didn't choose to go to Paris, it was a great opportunity because I gave birth to my 2 sons when I was in Paris. And it was great to be close to the family in this time of my life. So I really appreciate that. And after 6 years, my husband had to return to London. So I resigned and sadly leave the job I love. And I decided to take a year off because my second son was only 2 months old at that time. I arrived in London and really the stay-at-home mom life was really challenging for me. And when my second son was only 1 year, I was very happy to go back to work, to go back working. Unfortunately, after 6 months, I had to resign and quit my job because my husband was moving to Singapore. So we were very exciting because we wanted to come to Asia for a while. So very happy to move to Singapore, but at the same time, quitting the job so soon and starting all over again was a little bit challenging. And my husband was traveling a lot at that time as well. My kids were still young, 2 and 5. I wanted to return back to France on a regular basis, so I decided not to look for a job. But this time, to avoid the experience I had in London, I started working as a volunteer for the French Association. And it was great because I met new people. I had an interesting activity during the day for myself, and I felt really good about it. But I still had a lot of free time during the day. So I did guided tours in Singapore to discover the city. And during the weekend, I would bring back my kids and my husband and for them to discover the city, the culture, and the history. And this is how I got the idea of setting up my own company, Kiddo Trip, which creates self-guided tours for families in Singapore and soon in other cities in Southeast Asia, I hope. So that's a little bit my story.
I see. I love that. I love that your trailing spouse experience in Singapore has actually been like a direct feed into starting the company. That's really cool. So I've got so many questions. I want to take you back to New York when you were like young, working career gal. How did you find that sort of experience of, well, moving to a foreign country? Was that the first time living abroad for you?
So I lived abroad for 6 months for a study before in Canada, but it was just at the frontier, but more French than English. And so I already had the experience to be far away from family and friends. So this part I was not afraid of. I was very excited to go to New York. I was not sure what it will be, the life will be like. I'm not a very city girl. So, but I ended up discovering that New York is really close to nature, hiking, the sea, and lots of different things, outdoors things. So I was very, very happy. I think the biggest challenge was the English, because I could hardly speak English at that time. So, but
I feel that is not the truth. I feel that every European thinks their English is awful.
No, completely true. But I still work only with the team in France. So the transition was very smooth, because even all my colleagues in the office were English. I didn't work with them. So it was not a barrier in the day-to-day life. And back then I was a software developer. I was creating code all day. So not talking too much neither anyway. So yes, it was very exciting. And life in New York, especially without kids, was amazing. We had 4 amazing years. We traveled all around the US and we had so much fun.
Oh, that's so good. And so how were you building your network in New York? Was it through your office, like through your colleagues, or through your husband's colleagues? Like, how did you sort of settle into expat life in New York?
Yeah, mostly from my company, because I worked for a big company at that time. There were a lot of young people doing 1 year in any city. So, and also New York is very cosmopolitan. You have you have people from all around the world. So it was mostly from my company. My husband was very, very busy with work. So didn't get to network too much outside of really business relationship. And we got all our friends through my company originally. I also played tennis, and we did a little bit of tennis matches. So I met also people like this with sport. I think that's also.
Yeah, it's such a good way to meet people, isn't it? In any new places, finding a sport that you love, and teams and competitions and things. It's so good.
That's right. Yes, very good opportunity to meet new people. Yeah.
So how did you find when you arrived in Singapore then, with your, obviously with kids involved, how did you find that like experience when you first arrived in Singapore, as opposed to when you arrived in New York?
So definitely the organization is not the same. We left New York with 4 luggages, and that's it. And for Singapore, it was a full truck. So organization is much more complicated. You have to take care of the schools. You have to take care of the accommodation. Everything needs to be sorted before you arrive. Hopefully, it's best, especially the school. Whereas when you don't have kids, you just arrive and you have 1 month to find a place. You don't care too much. So there is really no pressure on that. Whereas when you have kids, you really want to settle down the kids. So it takes the first 3 months, it's all about the kids, settling the kids, starting the school, putting all the activities in place, and everything. So it's really a different mindset. But I mean, Singapore is very easy life with young children. I think it was very easy to settle down. There is a big French community as well, so it helped a lot. We met a lot of new people as soon as we arrived. And as I mentioned, in London, we were a little bit more isolated, because with the 2-month-old baby, we didn't go out so much, and I didn't join any association or community. So I met a couple of parents through my older son, but that's it. Whereas in Singapore, I already knew that I wanted to see people and not spend my day inside alone. So that's why I joined this French community, this French association, and I met a lot of people at the beginning. So it was very easy to settle down in Singapore, I would say.
Well, that was going to be my next question then. And then how would you compare the difference between Singapore and England?
But funny enough, because England is so close to France, and we are similar in a lot of ways, you would think it's easier. and you don't prepare you so much. And that's why I didn't join the French Association. Why do I know the French Association? I'm just like a couple of miles from Paris, right? It's easy. But no, it's not easy. I think expatriation, you need to build your network always, even if it's not far from home and you think you know the city already, but building your network is very important to settle down and start your new lives there. So that's why I think I miss something when I was in London, but I love the life in London with kids as well. It was easy and not as easy as Singapore, but easier than the life we had in Paris. It was a lovely part of London and we really enjoy it as well. It's just that I think if I would do it again, I would join more networks. More
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think, like you said, you had a 2-month-old baby. That always makes life a bit challenging to even get out of your pajamas, let alone go and build new networks.
That's right. I think it was the combination of both.
Yeah. So you've done 3 different countries in the last sort of 10 or 15 years. Tell me, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced, do you think, in those? And it can be country specific, or if it's been a running theme that you've found throughout those times, what do you think some of those have been?
The biggest challenges was being stuck in Singapore for 2 years because of COVID. The COVID time was like, I think for everyone, right? It was awful, but as expat, we were really isolated. And when you don't see your family for 2 years, it's very hard. We celebrated birthdays and Christmas on Zoom, but it's not the same thing. We really miss them very much. And that's really the biggest challenge we had over 15 years traveling all around.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that, look, I'm sure so many people, especially because you guys arrived in Singapore just before lockdown, you got a glimpse of what life was like beforehand, and then you spent the next 3 years pretty much in a condo or in a very small space. What do you think that? I guess it's a bit tricky around the advice thing when you move to a new country and then there's a global pandemic, which no one's actually dealt with in this lifetime before. But what are some things that you wish that you had known when you first started this trailing spouse journey? And I want you to sort of answer that maybe in 2 parts. So one, is there things that you wish you'd known when it was just the 2 of you, so pre-kids, and then is there stuff that you'd known once with kids, with the moving around side of things?
I don't think the kids change so much, but I think my first advice, and maybe if you have kids, you will never meet parents, or because with kids you already meet people. And so I think my first advice is really don't stay alone. Because if you don't have kids, you're not going to meet people like this. So like I mentioned several times, if you join an association or community, I think this is a great way to build your network and meet people and don't stay alone. Because that's really a challenge when you arrive in a new city. Everything is new, and sometimes you're sad to leave your family and friends behind. So you need to cheer up and change your mind and meet new people, and they can show you the city, show you around, experience the same thing. Because if you meet expat, it's really good because they have the same feeling as the one you just arrived. And sometimes, it's a little bit challenging. And also, if you have time, volunteer for local association or expat association. This gives you the flexibility to still take care of your family, but at the same time, it's a rewarding activity for yourself. It's good to take time for yourself and do something for yourself. So that's something I would advise in general. And also, the second advice I have is dare to change careers and reinvent yourself. Because having a career as a trailing spouse, it can be difficult. But it's also full of opportunities, I think. It's easier to try something new when you have nothing to lose. So, and especially, I think it's more for mom, because when you arrive without kids, you're going to look for a job. You're going to go for it. For moms, we have less time. We need to reinvent yourself. We need to see what we can do with this new country, how we can. So dare to change careers, dare to try new things. I think that's my advice. Yeah.
So talk me through your career change from software developer to, well, still not a huge change in that you're still, I'm assuming, building a tech platform that is still going to be requiring a fair bit of your previous skills, but talk me through what that sort of has looked like for you.
That's right. But I think the first thing is you should ask people things. Like when I was in Paris, I never think my boss would agree to transfer me in New York because we were not working with a team there. I knew there was an office because it was a big company, but I was like, well, I have nothing to lose. Let's ask. And I think I would ask differently afterwards. I would try to have a better salary and things like that. But I got what I wanted. I got a job there. I got a visa. I got everything. And it was so comfortable for me to arrive there. So if you don't ask, you don't get. So really try and ask. And you see, sometimes you're really surprised about the answer. So that's the first thing. So when I moved to New York, I was still a developer, but over there I met an amazing guy, and thanks to him, I become a project manager. That's what I wanted to do for a while, and he gave me this opportunity in New York. I really love to oversee the whole project and have a bigger view on the product and things like that. When I moved back to Paris and started to work for a smaller company, I could do lot of different things, because when you're in a big company, usually you have one type of job, and it's very restricted, which is good and bad, and nothing. But in small company, you do a little bit of everything. And I fell in love with product management, defining the product, what it should do, meeting the client-facing job was really interesting for me. So I really loved that. When I moved to London, I kept this job as a product manager. And in Singapore, like I say, I was not working. I joined the French Association, funny enough, to take care of their website. So you see, the developer background came back anyway. I'm never far away from technology. But yes, after I was a general secretary for them for 3 years. So it was also a lot of learnings and a very good experience. And then when I set up the company, of course, my technical background helped me a lot to set up the website. But I discovered so many things. Like I print physical magazine, and I never did that before. All the printing and sending, all the physical product, it's really new to me. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot about marketing and sales. I'm still not very good at that, still learning a lot. But that's a journey, and that's what I like with this. It's to learn and to meet other entrepreneurs and to learn from them and with them. It's a very good opportunity. I think when you are in an expat community, we get also closer to people because we have the same experience, and you meet a lot of different people you will never meet in your own country, and you learn so much from their experience and sharing together. So it's very, very rewarding.
And so your time, I love that volunteering at the French Association for so long, like that's such a cool thing to have done. But did you find that was a really good way to not only build your social network, but has that then helped with the business side of things as well?
When I launched a business, I could a little bit, reach out to the community. So it had helped a little bit to test the product. I launched in French at the beginning, but it didn't help too much for launching the business. A little bit, but not that much. Yeah, the community is already quite close. We have a Facebook group. We can reach out to each other, and we have a nice French community here. Very good people.
Well, I love your advice on taking advantage of sometimes that a relocation can also mean relocating and reinventing and thinking outside the box of what to do next. Oh, Séverine, it's been so fabulous to hear your story. I love that you've been doing this for such a long time and you're still thoroughly enjoying it, which I love. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
But thank you for your time, Jo. It was nice to speak to you today.
Thank you.